I was standing at the cruise terminal, my suitcases resting at my feet, sunscreen on my face, and sunglasses perched on my nose, ready to embark on the vacation of a lifetime with my son and his wife. At least, that's what I thought, until suddenly a message lit up my phone screen. "Mom, there's been a change of plans. You're not coming on the cruise. We're going to make it just the family." In that single moment, my heart froze solid. But before I go on, please check if you're subscribed to the channel and drop a comment below. Where are you watching this video from? We love to know how far our stories are traveling. I can still smell the salty air of that morning. The Miami port was buzzing with excited tourists, hauling their luggage and their smiles. I was smiling too, anxious for the family cruise we had been planning for months. At 64 years old, this was going to be my first time on a ship, a small dream coming true after a lifetime of hard work. I had my sunblock in my straw bag, my brand new beach hat, 3 dresses I'd bought specifically for the formal dinners, the pure, simple happiness of a woman about to realize a modest dream. My son Robert was running late. Nothing new there. Ever since he married Paula, punctuality had become a rare commodity. I sat down on a bench near the boarding area and waited, watching the other families arrive, all hugs and excitement. So connected, just like I thought our family would be. That's when my phone vibrated. A message from Robert. "Mom, there's been a change of plans. You won't be coming with us on the cruise. Paula would prefer it to be just the family. We'll explain better when we get back." I read those words 3, 4, 5 times. My eyes refused to believe them, but my heart already knew the truth. I looked up, and there they were, on the ship's upper deck, Robert, Paula, and my 2 grandchildren, Mason and Lily. They didn't see me watching them, or maybe they did, and just pretended not to. Paula was smiling, fixing her blonde hair as she pointed something out to the kids. My son was looking down at his phone, probably checking to see if I'd read his gutless message, "just the family." As if I were... what? A distant moon? A stranger? Not the woman who raised him by herself, who worked 2 jobs so he could go to good schools, who held him when he came home crying after losing a soccer game? My hands were trembling. I grabbed my suitcases and walked out of that port without a single look back. The cab dropped me off at home. 40 minutes later, I walked into the apartment that once felt cozy and now just tasted of abandonment. I threw my bag onto the sofa and went straight to my home office, where I kept all the important documents. In the second drawer, inside a blue folder, was the contract for Robert's house, the house I had bought for them 5 years ago when they got married. The house where I wasn't welcome for weekend dinners because Paula needed space to create her own family environment. The house whose final mortgage payment I had made exactly 2 months ago. The house that was still, legally, in my name. They had never bothered with that little detail. In fact, Robert would always say, "It's just bureaucracy, Mom. We'll sort it out later." And I, foolishly, believed it was only a matter of time before we made the transfer official. But now I understood it wasn't an oversight. It was convenience. I wiped away the tears I hadn't even realized were falling. I took a deep breath and made a phone call. "Mr. Chen, it's Eleanor Vance. Do you remember that house I bought for my son?" "Yes, that one. I need to know what my legal options are." As I spoke with my lawyer, a strange sense of calm started to wash over me. It wasn't rage, though that was there, simmering just beneath my skin. It was a clarity I had never felt before, as if suddenly all the pieces were clicking into place. Paula's words about creating healthy boundaries, Robert's growing distance, the comments about me being too intense with the grandkids, the excuses for not including me in celebrations, even the fact that for the last few Christmases, my gifts had become increasingly impersonal. A blender one year, a department store gift card the next. These weren't isolated incidents. It was a pattern, a plan to slowly push me away while keeping only what was useful to them. my financial support, my availability for emergencies, my name on the deed to the house they couldn't afford on their own. I had been reduced to an emotional and financial ATM. Mr. Chen confirmed what I already suspected. The house was legally mine. I could do whatever I wanted with it. Sell it, rent it, modify it. Everything was in my name, and there was no document promising a future transfer to Robert. How long would it take to complete a sale? I asked, surprised by the firmness in my own voice, with an interested buyer. 2 weeks, maybe less if we fast-tracked the process. The cruise was 10 days long. I opened my laptop and typed an email to Tanya, my realtor friend. I need to sell a house. Fast. It's a matter of dignity. That night, I didn't cry anymore. I made a cup of chamomile tea. I sat on my balcony and watched the city lights of Denver twinkle below. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about Robert or Paula or the grandkids. I was thinking about me. Who was I before I became Robert's mom or the kids' grandma? I remembered the Eleanor who loved to dance, who dreamed of seeing Paris, who had her own friends and interests. The Eleanor who had been gradually erased to make way for a more convenient version of myself, one that fit neatly into the corners of their lives without bothering them, without taking up too much space. That text message at the port hadn't just been an exclusion from a cruise. It had been a cruel reminder that to them I was no longer essential, I was disposable, an extra, not family. Well, if that's how they wanted to play, I had my own cards to play too, and it was time to deal them. I took out my journal and started writing a plan, not for revenge, though there was a bitter taste of justice to it all. It was for survival. It was for self-respect. As their ship sailed away from the coast, I was beginning to chart my own course, a course where, for the first time in decades, I was the priority. The following week was a whirlwind of calculated actions. Tanya, my realtor friend, found an interested couple in just 3 days young, no kids, with cash on hand. We scheduled a showing for the next day. I needed an excuse to get into Robert's house. After all, even though it was legally mine, they considered it their home. I used the key I had always kept. "For emergencies, Mom," Robert used to say. I let myself in, feeling the strange sensation of invading a space that belonged to me on paper, but not in their hearts. "Just came to pick up a few plants to look after while they're away," I told the nosy neighbor who was watching me from her garden. She smiled, believing it. After all, I was Robert's devoted mother, a familiar face in the neighborhood. Inside the house, I was met by silence and memories. I remembered the day I handed them the keys, the emotional hug Robert gave me, the tears of gratitude in Paula's eyes. How had that turned into just the family in such a short time? As I walked through the rooms, I noticed the signs of my gradual erasure. On the walls, my picture appeared less and less. In the most recent photo frames, I wasn't there at all. On the bookshelves, none of the books I had given them were on display. Even the quilt I had hand-knitted for them was stuffed in a closet, replaced by a store-bought throw. In Robert's office, I opened the drawers, looking for any documents related to the house. That's when I found an envelope with a lawyer's letterhead. Inside was a draft document titled Transfer of Property. It was dated 3 months ago, but had never been signed or presented to me. The text was clear. They were planning to ask for the house to be transferred into their names as soon as the final mortgage payment was made, which was 2 months ago. But something had stopped them. Maybe they calculated that I wouldn't agree so easily, or perhaps they were waiting for the perfect moment to bring it up, when I was emotionally vulnerable. I put the document in my purse. Evidence. Not that I needed any more reasons to go through with my plan, but this confirmed my suspicions. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was a strategy. The next day, the interested couple viewed the house. Camille and Roberto, both doctors, fell in love with the property. "It's perfect for us," they said, completely unaware of the drama contained within those walls. They made an offer above market value with cash and a closing date in 1 week. "Are you sure about this, Eleanor?" Tanya asked as we signed the initial paperwork. I've never been more sure, I replied, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. My lawyer, Mr. Chen, handled all the legalities. He explained that, as the registered owner, I had every right to sell the property. They can't claim surprise or ignorance, since the property was always clearly in your name, he explained. The sale was completed in record time. The money was deposited into my account, and the new owners would receive the keys on July 27th, one day before the cruise returned. There was one more detail to handle. What would they find when they came back? I didn't want to just disappear. I wanted them to understand the consequences of their choices, so I wrote a letter. Robert and Paula? The house you called home has been sold. Legally, it was always mine, as you well know. Just as you knew, I finished paying off the mortgage 2 months ago, using my retirement funds. When I received your message telling me I wasn't family enough to join you on the cruise, I finally understood my place in your life. A convenient peripheral place, available only when needed. The new owners will be moving in tomorrow. Your personal belongings have been placed in a storage unit, paid for 3 months. The key and address are with Mr. David Chen, whose contact information is attached. Don't bother looking for me. Just as you needed space to grow as a family, I also need space to rediscover who I am, beyond a disposable mother and grandmother Eleanor. I sealed the letter in an envelope and left it on the kitchen table, where it would surely be the first thing they saw. Beside it, I placed a copy of the house deed and the sales contract. On the last night, before handing the keys to the new owners, I did something I hadn't done in years. I danced. I put on an old Etta James record on my phone and spun around the empty living room, now stripped of furniture, cleansed of the fake smiles in the photographs, and free of the unspoken lies. Your family is now homeless, I whispered to the echo of the empty house. That dance wasn't a celebration of revenge. It was a ritual of liberation. For years, I had defined myself by the roles I played in other people's lives. Robert's mother, Paula's mother-in-law, Mason and Lily's grandmother, emotional and financial ATM, always available, never too much. As I twirled in the empty room, I felt the weight of those roles falling away from me. It was as if each spin returned a piece of the Eleanor I once was, the one who had her own dreams, desires, a life beyond serving others. The next day, I handed the keys to Camille and Roberto. They were radiant, talking about plans to redecorate, how they would turn the spare room into a shared office. The energy in this house is special, Camille said. You can feel there was a lot of love here. There was, I replied, but not all love survives convenience. She looked at me, not quite understanding, but she smiled anyway. I smiled back. A genuine smile for the first time in days. As I walked out the gate for the last time, I felt a mix of emotions I couldn't name. It wasn't exactly peace or vengeance or sadness. It was the painful relief of finally seeing reality for what it is, not what we wish it to be. I went back to my apartment and made a call. Marie, I said to my sister, that trip to Paris we always dreamed of. How about next month? I hung up before she could answer, immediately forwarding her the plane tickets I had bought that morning. It was time to live my own dreams, not just finance the dreams of others. That night, I slept deeply for the first time since that day at the port. No nightmares, no waking with a start, no dull ache in my chest that had been my companion for weeks. While their ship was slowly returning to the coast, I was moving further and further away from the port where they had departed. Not physically, but emotionally. They were planning to return to a life that no longer existed. I was planning to depart for a life that was just beginning. The flight to Paris was in exactly 30 days, just enough time to organize my new life and watch the consequences of my decision from a distance. Not out of cruelty, but because I needed to understand that this wasn't a temporary nightmare. It was the reality I had built for myself, one brick of self-denial at a time. 3 days before the cruise was due to return, I received a text from Robert. "Mom, we miss you. The kids have been asking about you every day, can't wait to show you the pictures. I smiled bitterly at the phone screen. The hypocrisy was so transparent I could almost see it shimmering between the words, no apology for the exclusion, no acknowledgement of the wound inflicted. Just the continuation of the script where I was expected to play my part, the understanding mother, always ready to forgive. I didn't reply. Every unread notification was a small act of rebellion against decades of unconditional availability. The next day, another message arrived, this time from Paula Eleanor. We brought you some wonderful Belgian chocolates. Lily picked them out especially for her grandma. Again, I left it on read. Silence was my only possible response at that moment, because if I started talking, I might not be able to stop. And I wasn't ready for that confrontation yet. With 24 hours until their docking, Robert called. I let it go to voicemail. Mom, it's strange that you're not answering. Is everything okay? We're worried. We arrive tomorrow at 6 p.m. Can we come over for dinner? The kids miss you. The concern in his voice sounded genuine, which made everything even more confusing. How could he exclude me so coldly and then act as if nothing had happened? It was like we were living in parallel realities. On the day of their return, I woke up early and went to a coffee shop near the port. From a distance, I saw the enormous white ship slowly approaching the coastline. Somewhere on that floating structure were the people I once called my family. I ordered a double espresso and watched the growing activity at the terminal. Anxious families waiting for their loved ones, rideshare drivers holding up signs with names, street vendors offering water and snacks. At 6:15 p.m. Southso, I saw Robert, Paula, and the kids coming down the ramp. They were tanned, smiling, loaded with shopping bags. Lily was clutching a new stuffed animal. Mason was wearing a t-shirt from some Caribbean island. They looked like the perfect picture of a happy family. I turned away before they could see me. I paid for my coffee and left. I didn't need to witness the moment they read my letter, the moment they realized the house was no longer theirs. That wouldn't bring me any satisfaction. I went back to my apartment and turned off my phone. Whatever happened in the next few hours, I didn't want to be a witness. This wasn't about torturing them or savoring their confusion. It was about finally creating the space I needed to heal from decades of small disappointments. That night, I slept fitfully. A part of me still felt guilty, conditioned to put their needs above my own. But another part, the one growing stronger every day, knew I had done what was necessary. At 7:43 the next morning, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Robert. He was alone. With dark circles under his eyes and a pale face, I opened the door without a word. "How could you?" were his first words, his voice trembling with a mix of rage and disbelief. "You sold our house without even talking to us?" "It wasn't our house, Robert. It was mine. It always was. It's right there in the contract you never bothered to read." He ran his hands through his hair, disoriented. "But we lived there. We had a life there. The kids grew up in that yard. And I had plans. I had plans to travel with you, to be part of the family. Funny how plans change, isn't it? It was just one trip, Mom. One single trip." "No, Robert. It was the last straw. It was the moment I finally understood my place in your life, convenient when you need me, disposable when I'm in your way." He sank onto the sofa, looking suddenly exhausted. "Where are we supposed to live now? Did you even think about the kids?" That question lit a fire inside me. Decades of sacrifice, of putting his needs before mine, and still his first concern wasn't for me, for my feelings, for the pain they caused. It was about the inconvenience I had created. You have 3 months of paid storage, plenty of time to find another place. And yes, I thought about the kids. I thought about what kind of adults they'll become, watching how their father treats his own mother. Robert looked at me as if I were a stranger. In a way, maybe I was. The mother he knew, docile, always available, ready to sacrifice everything, had vanished at the port that day. "Paula is a wreck," he said, as if that should matter to me. "And how do you think I felt when I read your text that day?" just the family, as if I were a distant acquaintance, not the woman who raised you alone. It was just a poor choice of words, Mom. It didn't mean anything. It meant everything, Robert, and you know it. It was the perfect summary of what I've been feeling for years, that I'm only welcome when it's convenient, that my role is to finance dreams, not participate in them. He stood up, pacing nervously around the room. What do you want from us? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. We're both very sorry. It was insensitive. It was wrong. But to sell our house? This is completely out of proportion. I don't want a forced apology. And it's not about the house. It's about respect. It's about finally understanding my own value. And how much is that respect worth? The price of a house? That question hit me like a slap. Suddenly, I saw with crystal clarity what was happening. He wasn't here because he cared about my feelings or because he understood his mistake. He was here because he needed a roof over his head. You still don't get it, do you? This isn't a negotiation. The house has been sold. The new owners have already moved in. It's irreversible, just like the damage you caused by excluding me from that trip. So now what? What do we do? You? I don't know. Me? I'm going to Paris in 27 days. I'm finally going to live my own life, not just exist in service of yours. Robert stared at me as if he'd been electrocuted. Paris? For how long? I don't know. Maybe a few weeks. Maybe months. Maybe I won't come back. He fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking. I need to tell Paula. She's not going to believe this. Tell her I finally understand what family means. It's something small, closed off, that eventually eats itself from the inside. When Robert left, closing the door behind him, I felt an enormous weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't happiness or satisfied revenge. It was simply the relief of having finally spoken the truths I had held inside for so long. I took my laptop and opened the airline's email. The ticket to Paris glowed on the screen like a promise, not of escape, but of a new beginning. At 64 years old, I was about to start an entirely new chapter, where I was the protagonist, not just a supporting character in someone else's story. In the following days, the messages and calls didn't stop Robert, Paula, even mutual friends who were recruited to try and bring me to my senses. Every phone notification made me take a deep breath, searching for the strength to stick to my decision. Eleanor, you can't just disappear and leave your son and grandchildren on the street, said Martha, a friend of decades, in a WhatsApp voice note. I know they hurt you, but this is disproportionate. Disproportionate. That word haunted me, as if there were an exact measurement for how one should react to each wound, a perfect equation to calculate how much suffering was deserved. Which response was appropriate? They're not on the street, Martha, I typed back. They're in a storage unit paid for 3 months. Besides, Robert earns a good salary. He always said the house was too small for them anyway. Now they have the opportunity to find something that truly suits their family. Even as I typed those words, I felt a pang of guilt, not for my actions, but for the bitter person I seemed to be becoming. This wasn't the Eleanor I knew, or maybe it was, finally uncaged after decades of suppressing her true feelings. On the 10th day after the house sale, I received a bouquet of flowers, white roses, my favorite, with a handwritten card from Paula. Eleanor, I understand your pain and I sincerely apologize for how we made you feel. Can we talk? Not for us, but for the children. They miss you. The appeal to the children was predictable. I knew they would eventually use them as an emotional shield, a last resort to make me give in. But this time, it wouldn't work, because I missed them too, painfully so. But I needed to break the cycle I had created, where my unconditional love was taken for granted and exploited. I put the flowers in a vase, took a picture, and sent it to Paula with a single word: thank you. It wasn't forgiveness, nor an opening for dialogue. It was a civil acknowledgement of the gesture, nothing more. 2 weeks before my trip, I had an unexpected visitor, Lily, my 7-year-old granddaughter, accompanied by her nanny. Grandma! She ran into my arms as soon as I opened the door. I missed you so much. Why haven't you come to visit us at the new house? My heart clenched. The children, of course, were blameless. They were just pawns in this emotional chess game the adults were playing. I missed you too, my love, I replied, hugging her tightly. I just had to take care of a few things. The nanny handed me an envelope. Mrs. Paula asked me to give this to you personally. Inside was a formal invitation for a dinner at the new house they had rented. To start over as a family, the card read, "In elegant script that night, I sat with my journal and weighed my options. Going to the dinner would signal that everything could go back to normal, that a formal apology was enough to erase years of small humiliations. Not going would confirm the image they were likely building of me, the bitter, vengeful old woman." I picked up the phone and called Robert. "I got the invitation," I said without preamble. "That's great." He sounded genuinely relieved. "So, you're coming?" "No, Robert, I'm not." Silence on the other end of the line. "Mom, we're trying to fix things. What more do you want from us? I don't want anything from you. And that's the point. For years, you wanted me available when it was convenient and invisible when it wasn't now. I'm choosing to be unavailable to you and visible to myself. But what about the kids? They're not to blame for any of this. I agree. And that's why I will maintain contact with them. But on my terms, not yours." "What terms are those?" His voice had an edge of poorly disguised irritation. "I will take them for a weekend with me. Once a month. Without you. Just as you wanted a cruise without me, I want time with my grandchildren without you. This is ridiculous, Mom. You're using the children as a bargaining chip. No, I'm setting boundaries. Something I should have done a long, long time ago." I hung up before he could reply. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or regret. It was the adrenaline of finally confronting the toxic dynamics I had allowed to fester. The next day, Paula showed up at my door. She was impeccably dressed, as always, but her face betrayed sleepless nights. "Eleanor, can we talk? Just the two of us? Woman to woman?" I gestured for her to come in. I offered coffee, which she declined, and we sat facing each other in the living room. "What happened to you?" she asked, her tone a mix of concern and accusation. "This isn't the Eleanor we know. You're right, it's not. That Eleanor died at the port when she read her son's message saying she wasn't family enough for a cruise." Paula looked down. "It was a terrible mistake. We were stressed with the preparations. I wasn't feeling well, with my mother being sick. It was an impulsive decision. Impulsive would be forgetting to tell me about a dinner. Deliberately excluding me from a family trip is a conscious choice, one that reveals exactly what you think about my place in the family." Paula sighed, adjusting the pearl necklace I had given her last Christmas. "We've always been grateful for everything you did for us. Eleanor, the house, the financial support, the help with the kids. And is this how you show gratitude? By treating me like an employee whose services can be dismissed when it's inconvenient?" "It's not fair to put it that way," she protested, her voice trembling. "We've been trying to build our own family, our own identity as a couple. Sometimes that means setting boundaries." "Boundaries," I repeated, feeling the bitter taste of the word. It's funny how those boundaries never applied when you needed money to renovate the kitchen, or when you wanted to leave the kids with me to travel for work. Paula flushed slightly. "I know it looks hypocritical. It doesn't look hypocritical, Paula. It is." She took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "What can I do to fix this? We are truly sorry." I looked at her, really looked at her, searching for signs of sincerity in her perfectly made-up face. There was something there. Not genuine remorse, perhaps, but certainly an understanding of the consequences. "There's nothing to fix," I replied calmly. "You made your choices. I made mine. Now we live with them. But what about the children? We need to find some stability for them. As I told Robert, I will remain present in their lives, on my terms, Weekends without us? Her tone betrayed irritation. As if we're not trustworthy with our own children? It's not a matter of trust, Paula. It's a matter of building my relationship with them independently of you, just as you built your family independently of me. Paula stood up, smoothing her skirt as she did when she was uncomfortable. You've changed, Eleanor. Yes, I have. I should have changed a long time ago. After she left, I felt strangely light. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't cried. I had simply spoken the truths that needed to be said, without drama or excessive spite. The old Eleanor would have given in. She would have accepted any crumb of reconciliation, starved for approval and inclusion. But this new Eleanor, or perhaps the original Eleanor, who had been suffocated by years of self-denial, demanded respect, not just scraps of attention. In the following week, before my trip, I kept my promise. I picked up Mason and Lily to spend a day with me. I took them to the zoo. We bought ice cream, took silly photos, and talked about everything and nothing. Their friends at school, their favorite animals, the book Lily was reading. Not once did I mention their parents or the situation between us. They were children. They deserved to be spared from the adults' drama. When I dropped them off, Robert was waiting at the door tense. "Did you have fun?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "A lot," I replied, maintaining the same forced lightness. "They brought you the drawings they made. Thank you for doing this," he said, sounding genuinely grateful, "for not pushing them away because of all this." "I would never do that, Robert. I'm not like you." The comment hit him as intended, but he just nodded, accepting the blow. "When are you coming back from Paris?" he asked, changing the subject. "I don't know." "Maybe never." "Are you serious?" There was genuine panic in his voice. "For the first time in decades, I'm putting my needs first. I'll stay as long as I need to rediscover myself. And what if we need you? What if the kids need you?" I smiled, not with joy, but with the certainty of someone who had finally understood her own worth. "You survived without me for a 10-day cruise. I'm sure you'll survive during my trip." On the night before my flight to Paris, I did something I had been putting off. I opened the box where I kept all of Robert's keepsakes. Childhood photos, school drawings, his first baby shoe. Each item told the story of an unconditional love that had slowly been transformed into convenience. I didn't throw anything away, nor did I hide the box in the back of the closet. I simply looked at it, acknowledging that those memories were part of me. Just as the pain of the recent exclusion was, I didn't need to deny the past to embrace the future. The next morning, as the taxi took me to the airport, I received a message from Robert. "Have a good trip, Mom. We love you, even if you don't believe it right now." I didn't reply. Not because I didn't believe in their love, but because I had learned that love without respect is just an empty word, an excuse to continue harmful behaviors. The plane took off promptly at 10:25 a.m. As the United States shrank below, I felt as if I were breathing freely for the first time in years. This wasn't just a geographical journey, it was a journey into myself, to rediscover the Eleanor who existed before being Robert's mom or the kids' grandma. The Eleanor who had her own dreams, desires, a life that wasn't summed up by serving others. The flight attendant served champagne in business class, a luxury I had allowed myself with part of the money from the house sale. I raised my glass in a silent toast, not to the end of a family, but to the beginning of me. Paris welcomed me with a light drizzle and a gray sky, but not even that could dampen the magic of the moment. My sister Marie was waiting at the airport with a colorful umbrella and a huge smile. "Welcome to your new life," she said, hugging me tightly. Marie had always been my opposite. She never married, never had children, built an international career, and had been living between Paris and Cancun for decades. While I dedicated my life to Robert, she dedicated hers to herself. For years, I had felt a veiled superiority regarding her choices, as if my maternal sacrifices were somehow nobler than her selfish life, as we used to call it in our family conversations. Now, at 64, I was beginning to question who had truly made the wiser choices. "How do you feel?" Marie asked as her driver navigated us through the Parisian traffic-free, scared, guilty, all at the same time. She laughed. "Welcome to real life, sister, where no emotion exists in isolation and every decision has a price." Marie's apartment was in Le Marais, a historic neighborhood filled with galleries, cafes, and independent designer shops. Her sophisticated lifestyle had always seemed extravagant to me, almost frivolous. Now I saw how she had created a life that perfectly reflected who she was, without compromise, without unnecessary sacrifices. "I've prepared the guest room, but I think we need to find your own space soon," she said, showing me the lovely room overlooking an inner courtyard. "How long are you planning to stay?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I never planned anything beyond selling the house and buying the ticket." "Perfect," Marie smiled. "The best journeys are the ones without a set script." In the following days, I immersed myself in Paris like a thirsty person in an oasis. We visited museums, sat in cafes people watching, and walked for hours along the Seine. I absorbed every moment like a sponge, filling a void I didn't even know existed within me. My phone remained mostly off. I turned it on only once a day, usually at night, to check for important messages and make a short video call with Lily and Mason. The conversations were always light, focused on their daily activities and my discoveries in Paris. We never talked about the situation with their parents or when I would return. A week after my arrival, Marie hosted a dinner with some of her friends, artists, writers, university professors, fascinating people living intense, meaningful lives well into their 60s. "This is my sister, Eleanor." She introduced me to an elegant woman with gray hair. She's finally discovered there's life beyond being a mother and grandmother. At another time, I would have been offended by that description. But that night, amidst laughter and glasses of red wine, I recognized the truth in her words. "And what do you do, Eleanor?" asked Philip, a comparative literature professor. "I'm rediscovering who I am," I replied. Surprised by my own honesty, I spent decades being defined by my roles in other people's lives. Now I'm writing my own definition. "Ah, a journey of self-discovery," he smiled. "The most important journey of all." That night was a revelation. For the first time in decades, I was seen and appreciated as Eleanor. Not as someone's mother, someone's grandmother, someone's mother-in-law, just Eleanor, with her own opinions, stories, and dreams. The next day, Marie surprised me with a proposal. I have a friend who rents a small apartment in the 11th arrondissement, nothing fancy, but with all the Parisian charm. "Do you want to see it?" "Rent? For me?" "But I don't know how long I'll stay. Exactly why. No long-term commitment. Just a place of your own while you figure out the next steps." The apartment was a typical Parisian studio, small but perfectly organized, with tall windows that let in the golden autumn light, old wooden floors that creaked slightly underfoot, a tiny but functional kitchen. "It's perfect," I whispered, feeling that this space symbolized exactly where I was in life. A temporary place, but mine, a beginning. That same afternoon, I signed a 3-month renewable lease. With part of the money from the house sale, I could afford this transitional period without immediate financial worries. After 2 weeks in Paris, I received an email from Mr. Chen. Robert had hired a lawyer and was threatening to contest the sale of the house, claiming there was a verbal agreement that the property would eventually be his. "Don't worry," Mr. Chen wrote. "Without formal documentation, there's nothing they can legally do. The sale was completely legitimate. Still, the news affected me, not out of fear of losing a legal battle I knew was non-existent, but because it confirmed that Robert still hadn't understood. He continued to see the situation as an injustice against him, not as a consequence of his own actions. That night, I called him for the first time since I left. Why the lawyer, Robert? Mom, he sounded genuinely surprised to hear my voice. Where are you? We were worried in Paris, like I said I would be. Why did you hire a lawyer? Silence on the other end. Then a sigh. Because it's not fair. That house was our home. We had an agreement. What agreement, Robert? The one that existed only in your head, or the one you were planning to spring on me after I finished paying the mortgage? What are you talking about? I found the draft of the property transfer in your office, dated 3 months ago, never presented to me. You were waiting for the right moment to pressure me, weren't you? More silence. It was Paula's idea, he finally admitted, his voice low. She thought we should make the situation official, since we'd lived there for years, and you always said the house was for us. And you decided that without consulting me, just like you decided I wasn't family enough for the cruise. Those are completely different situations. No, Robert. They're exactly the same. In both cases, you made decisions about my life, my feelings, and my property without considering me worthy of being part of the conversation. I heard him take a deep breath, like he used to do as a child when trying to control his frustration. So now what? Are we going to live in this stalemate forever? You in Europe holding a grudge and us here trying to rebuild our lives? I'm not holding a grudge, Robert. I'm finally living my own life, not the one you designed for me as a convenient supporting role. And I suggest you drop the lawsuit. It will be humiliating for you when it's dismissed. You've changed, Mom. I don't recognize you anymore. Maybe you never really knew me, just the version of me that was convenient for you. After I hung up, I cried for the first time since arriving in Paris. Not for the house, not for the lawsuit, not even for the fractured relationship with my son. I cried for the Eleanor, who had spent decades suffocated under layers of others' expectations. For the woman she could have been if she had set healthy boundaries from the start. The next morning, Marie found me on the balcony watching the street with a cup of coffee. Tough night? She asked, noticing my swollen eyes. Robert hired a lawyer. He wants to contest the sale of the house. Marie let out a dry laugh. Of course he did. When people lose their privileges, they call it injustice. He's my son, Marie, despite everything. Yes, and you love him. But loving him doesn't mean letting yourself be exploited. You didn't take anything that was rightfully his. You just stopped giving what was rightfully yours. Her words resonated deeply. All my life, I had confused love with sacrifice, generosity with self-denial, as if to love necessarily meant to diminish oneself, to become less so, the other could be more. But true love, for others and for oneself, didn't demand that imbalance. It didn't ask me to disappear so others could shine. That afternoon, I did something I had never done before. I enrolled in a watercolor painting class, a teenage passion I had abandoned when I became pregnant with Robert, considering it a frivolous hobby incompatible with maternal responsibilities. The studio was in an old building in Montmartre, with huge windows that framed the rooftops of Paris like a living painting. The teacher, a man with white hair and ink-stained hands, greeted us with a gentle smile. "Watercolor is like life," he said, demonstrating a soft brushstroke. You can guide the water, but you can never fully control it. The beauty lies in accepting the unpredictable paths it chooses. As I mixed colors and watched them flow across the paper, I had an epiphany. This was exactly what I was learning to do with my own life. To guide, not control. To accept the unpredictable. To find beauty in unexpected paths. By the end of the class, I had created a small landscape. Imperfect, certainly, but vibrant with color and possibility, just like the new chapter I was beginning to write for myself. Autumn in Paris turned the trees into explosions of red and gold, as if the entire city were celebrating my personal transformation. The days grew shorter, but somehow my hours felt fuller, more meaningful. I established a routine that was exclusively mine. I woke up early. I had coffee at a small boulangerie on the corner where the owner already recognized me and would save me a still warm croissant. I walked through different parks each day. I attended my watercolor classes twice a week. And at night, I often had dinner with Marie and her friends, or simply stayed in my small apartment, reading or painting. It was a simple life, but entirely my own. Every decision, every moment was chosen by me and for me. The weeks passed, and the frequency of Robert's messages gradually decreased. Mr. Chen informed me that he had dropped the lawsuit, finally accepting that he had no legal grounds. I continued to have regular video calls with Lily and Mason, but even these became less frequent as they adapted to their new family dynamic. In mid-November, I received an unexpected email from Paula. "Eleanor, I hope you are well in Paris. The photos you send the children are beautiful. They love showing their friends where their grandma is living now. I'm writing to apologize, genuinely this time. Not for the practical inconveniences we caused each other, but for the emotional damage we caused you over the years. Robert and I have been in couples therapy since you left. It hasn't been easy to face certain truths about ourselves, about how we treated you, about the toxic patterns we established. The therapist helped us see how we normalized manipulative and selfish behaviors, disguising them as setting healthy boundaries or building our own family. The truth is, we took your generosity for granted. Worse, we consciously exploited it, knowing you would never say no, never set firm boundaries, never demand reciprocity. I don't expect you to forgive or forget, nor am I asking you to come back or restore the previous situation. I just wanted you to know that your drastic decision forced us to confront painful truths and begin real changes. Robert has difficulty expressing this, so I'm taking the liberty of speaking for both of us. He is still processing a lot of anger and guilt, but he is making progress. The children are well. We miss you, but we respect your journey. With sincere wishes for your well-being, Paula." I read the email several times, trying to discern manipulation disguised as sincerity, but something in those words sounded different from the previous attempts at reconciliation. There were no implicit demands, no mention of the house or the financial situation, no attempt to use the children as an emotional lever. I showed the email to Marie over dinner that night. "What do you think?" I asked, as she read it carefully. "It seems sincere," she said finally, handing back my tablet. "But the important question is, what do you think?" I reflected for a moment. "I think they're finally understanding, not just what I did, but why I did it." "And does that change anything for you?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I'm not ready to forgive completely, nor to return to the old dynamic, nor should you," Marie affirmed, pouring more wine into our glasses. "Forgiveness, when it comes, should be for your own peace, not for their comfort. And regardless of forgiveness, you must never again accept being treated as you were before." I nodded, absorbing the wisdom of her words. That night, I replied briefly to Paula. "Thank you for the email. I appreciate the honesty and acknowledgement. I am also on a journey of self-discovery and healing. I'm glad you are seeking professional help. The children are always welcome in my life, as is honest communication between us adults. Eleanor." Short, without promises or concessions, but also without hostility. A small step in a new direction, not a restoration of the past, but perhaps the construction of a different future. December arrived with Christmas lights transforming Paris into a fairy tale city. My watercolor class organized a small end-of-year exhibition, and to my surprise, 2 of my pieces were selected. Nothing grand, just a small gallery in Le Marais. But for me, it represented something monumental, the recognition of my value beyond family roles. On the opening day of the exhibition, I stood before my framed watercolor, a view of the Seine at sunset with shades of blue and purple melting into the horizon. It wasn't technically perfect, but it captured something real, a moment of peace I had experienced alone, sitting by the river. It's beautiful, a familiar voice said behind me. I turned, stunned, and there was Robert. "What are you doing here?" I asked, almost breathless with surprise. "Paula saw the exhibition invitation on your Facebook. I thought maybe it was time for a face-to-face conversation." He looked different, thinner, with subtle dark circles under his eyes, but also with a softer, less defensive expression. "Did you come alone?" "Yes. Paula stayed with the kids. She understood that we needed this time, just the two of us. We left the gallery and walked to a nearby cafe. The night was cold but clear, with a starry sky rarely seen in the illuminated city. Your painting is really nice," he said, as we sat down with steaming hot chocolates I didn't know you painted. "Me neither," I replied with a slight smile. "There are a lot of things about me that you don't know, that I didn't even know myself." He nodded, stirring his chocolate with a spoon. "I've thought a lot about that, about how I never really saw you as a whole person. With your own wants and dreams, you were just Mom. An extension of myself, in a way. The disarming honesty took me by surprise. This was not the defensive Robert I had left behind. "Therapy seems to be working," I commented. He gave a small smile. "It's hard, painful actually, confronting patterns I didn't even know I had, seeing how I treated the person who loved me most in the world. I still love you, Robert. That never changed." "I know, and I abused that love for years." He paused, taking a sip of chocolate. "I didn't come to ask you to come back or to undo what you did. I came to say that I understand and that I'm trying to change, to be better." We sat in silence for a few moments, letting those words float between us. "Are the kids okay?" I finally asked. "Yes, they miss you, but they're adapting. Lily has saved every photo you've sent in a special album. And you two?" "The new house. It's smaller, simpler, but it's working." Paula went back to work part-time. "We're learning to live with less, to value what really matters. I'm sorry it was so hard for you." He shook his head. "Don't be. It was necessary. Painful, yes, but necessary. Like surgery to remove something toxic." His words echoed something I had felt myself. That sense that the pain was necessary for healing, that some wounds needed to be opened to finally heal properly. "When are you going back?" I asked. "Tomorrow. It was a quick trip just to see you for this conversation. And what happens now? Between us?" Robert thought for a moment. "I don't know. I think we start over, in a way. Not like before. That would be impossible and unhealthy. But maybe we can build something new, based on mutual respect." This time I nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions. It wasn't complete forgiveness, nor immediate reconciliation. It was something more nuanced, more mature. The acknowledgement that relationships, like people, can evolve and change. "I'd like you to meet my friends here in Paris," I said impulsively. "Marie is hosting a Christmas dinner next week. I'd love that." He smiled. "But I have to get back for Paula and the kids. Maybe next time. Are you spending Christmas here?" "Yes, Marie and I have plans." I understand. He seemed genuinely disappointed but didn't press. "Maybe we can do a video call on the day the kids would love that." "I would love that," I replied sincerely. When we said goodbye at the cafe door, he hugged me. Not the quick, automatic hug that had become our custom in recent years, but a real, long, heartfelt embrace. "I love you, Mom," he whispered in my ear. "I'm sorry for everything." "I love you too, son," I replied, letting a few tears finally escape. I always have. As I watched him walk away down the street lit by Christmas lights, I felt something unravel inside me. It wasn't complete forgiveness. That would still take time, but it was the beginning of a cure. For him, for me, for our broken relationship. That night, I painted late into the night in my small apartment. It wasn't the Seine this time, or Paris. It was a Mexican beach, with turquoise water and golden sand, a place I once took Robert to as a child, where we built sandcastles that the tide inevitably washed away. I called the painting Reconstruction Christmas in Paris was magical in a way I had never experienced before. Marie decorated her apartment with a small pine tree laden with vintage ornaments. Golden lights twinkled in the windows, and the scent of vin, chaude, hot mulled wine filled the air. Her friends gathered for a sophisticated yet cozy dinner, bringing dishes from their own family traditions. On Christmas morning, we had the promised video call with Robert, Paula, and the kids. They had set up a special breakfast with the table decorated and gifts wrapped with my name on them. "To open when you come back," Lily explained with shining eyes. The conversation was surprisingly easy, without the tension I had expected. Paula seemed different too, less polished and perfect, more authentic in a way she proudly showed me the decorations in their new, smaller but cozy house, with personal touches that revealed more personality than the impersonal mansion they had inhabited before. "When are you coming back, Grandma?" Mason asked, leaning into the camera with hopeful eyes. I glanced at Marie, who was watching the video call with discreet interest, and then back at the screen. "I haven't decided yet, sweetie. I'm learning so much here, rediscovering things about myself." "Like painting," Robert said with a smile. "I showed them pictures of your exhibition." "Yes, I want to learn too," Lily exclaimed. "Can we have classes together when you come back?" "I would love that," I replied, feeling a wave of tenderness. "Maybe we can find a teacher in Denver." After the video call, Marie and I went for a walk along the Champs-Élysées, admiring the festive decorations and the bustle of families enjoying the holiday. "They really seem different," Marie commented. "More humble." Yes, I agreed. I think they're really trying. The therapy, the new financial reality, maybe even the shock of suddenly losing me, all of it seems to have awakened something in them. "And does that change your plans?" Marie asked, linking her arm in mine as we walked. I reflected for a moment. I don't know if I have plans, exactly. More of a direction than a destination. Very philosophical," she laughed. "But seriously, are you thinking of going back?" "Eventually, yes. This is a wonderful chapter, but not the whole book of my life. My grandchildren are there, and a part of my heart is too, but not under the same conditions as before." "Definitely not," Marie affirmed, not as a question, but as a confirmation. "I will never again be that invisible, convenient Eleanor, only needed when necessary." We stopped in front of a dazzling shop window, contemplating our reflections mixed with the twinkling Christmas lights. Two middle-aged women, similar in features but so different in life experiences, united by blood and shared history. "You know what impresses me most about this whole story?" Marie said, adjusting her red scarf. "It's not the revenge itself, though it was masterfully executed. It's how you emerged from it. Many people become bitter, consumed by resentment, even when they win. But you blossomed." Her words touched me deeply because they captured exactly what I had begun to perceive myself. The sale of the house hadn't been the end of the story, but the beginning. It wasn't about punishing Robert and Paula, but about freeing myself from the invisible chains I had helped forge. Over the years, January arrived with a light snow dusting the Parisian rooftops, transforming the city into a fairy tale landscape. My lease was ending, and I needed to make a decision renew for another 3 months or return home. On a particularly cold afternoon, walking through the nearly deserted Luxembourg Gardens, I made my decision it was time to go back. Not out of obligation or guilt, not caving to family pressure, but because I was ready to build the next chapter of my life. One that included my family, but also so much more. I called Robert that night and shared my decision. "I'm coming back in February," I said, "but with some conditions." "What are they?" His voice showed a mix of joy and caution. "I'm going to maintain my independence. I've already rented an apartment near yours, but I don't want to live with you, nor be a full-time babysitter." "I understand and respect that," he replied promptly. "I want to keep painting. I found a studio in Denver that offers classes similar to the ones I have here. Of course, Mom. Your time is your own, and we need to establish clear boundaries and mutual respect, all of us. Even the children need to understand that Grandma has her own life. We're working on that in therapy, he said, learning about healthy boundaries, not just to protect ourselves, but to respect others too. The ease with which he accepted my conditions confirmed what I had already sensed. Something fundamental had changed, not just in me, but in him too, maybe in all of us. The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparations, mailing some paintings and books, packing suitcases, saying goodbye to the new friends I had made. Paris had given me so much in such a short time, not just memories and skills, but a renewed version of myself. On the last night before my departure, Marie hosted a farewell dinner. During the toast, she looked me deep in the eyes and said, "To my sister Eleanor, who proved it's never too late to reinvent yourself." On the flight back, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past few months. I had left as a wounded woman seeking revenge, but I was returning as someone much more complex. A woman with clear boundaries, with her own passions, with a new understanding of her value beyond family roles. The revenge had only been the catalyst, the necessary push for a much deeper transformation. Robert and the children were waiting for me at the airport with handmade signs and genuine smiles. Paula was there too, more reserved, but visibly trying. I hugged everyone, feeling the familiar warmth mixed with a new, still-forming dynamic. "Welcome back," Robert said, carrying my bags. Or maybe I should say, "Welcome to a new beginning, I like that," I replied, smiling. A new beginning for all of us. In the following weeks, we gradually established our new dynamic, weekly family dinners where we talked about real issues, not just superficialities, special days with the grandchildren, where I took them to parks, museums, and yes, the watercolor classes Lily had so eagerly requested, and most importantly, time for myself. My cozy apartment, my studio 3 times a week, new friends, a life that was truly my own. Robert and Paula continued with therapy, learning to build a healthier relationship not just with me, but with each other. The loss of the house, though traumatic, had forced a reevaluation of priorities that was slowly transforming them into better people. On a particularly pleasant Sunday, 6 months after my return, we were all gathered for a barbecue at their place, in the yard of their apartment, smaller than the old house but much cozier. I watched the scene with a sense of peace I never imagined possible after that day at the port. Robert grilling, Paula setting the table, the kids playing on the grass, me contributing a dessert I had learned to make in Paris. "You know what I'm thinking?" Robert said, approaching with a glass of wine. "I never properly thanked you." For what? For being strong enough to force us to change, for not accepting being treated that way. If you had just given in, like you always did, we would have remained trapped in that toxic cycle. His words surprised me. I had never thought of my revenge as a gift to them as well, but in a way it had been. The pain of the loss, the humiliation, the forced awakening, all of it had created space for something new and potentially better. "I still miss it sometimes," he continued, looking at the horizon. The house, I mean. It was beautiful, spacious, but I realized it was never really a home. It was more of a trophy, a status symbol. This place, he gestured to the small garden where we stood, with its imperfections and limited space, feels much more like ours. I nodded, understanding perfectly what he meant. Sometimes we lose something valuable only to discover that what was truly precious was elsewhere. "I sometimes wonder," I said, "if I would have found the courage to change if I hadn't been so drastically excluded that day. If I would have rediscovered painting, Paris. My independence, I can't change what I did," Robert replied, his voice thick with emotion. "But I can promise that I will never make you feel invisible again." "That's all I ever wanted," I replied honestly, "to be seen. Not just as a mother or a grandmother, but as Eleanor, That afternoon, as I painted with Lily in the small studio I had set up in my apartment, she asked me an unexpected question. "Grandma, have you forgiven Daddy and Mommy for not taking you on the cruise?" I paused, searching for words a child could understand, yet were still true. "You know, Lily, forgiving doesn't mean pretending something painful didn't happen or that it didn't matter. It means deciding not to let that pain control your future. And yes, I'm forgiving a little more every day. Like in your paintings," she said, surprising me with her insight. "When you make a mistake, you can't erase it, but you can turn the mistake into something beautiful." I smiled, amazed by the wisdom of this 8-year-old girl. Exactly like that, my love. Exactly like that. Life continued its flow, with new patterns setting in. I was no longer the infinite source of financial and emotional support for Robert and Paula, nor did I want to be, but I was a constant and valued presence in their lives, especially for my grandchildren. I was also a developing artist, a friend, a traveler, a woman rediscovering dormant passions and cultivating new ones. The house I sold was never mentioned again, as if we all tacitly understood that it represented a closed chapter in our lives. The new owners had extensively renovated it. Once we drove by it during a walk and barely recognized it. "It looks like a different life," Robert commented. "It was," I replied simply. On my 63rd birthday, I received a surprising gift from Robert and Paula. A plane ticket to Italy and enrollment in a painting workshop in Tuscany. To continue your journey, the card accompanying the gift read, "With all our love and respect." Looking at the envelope with the tickets, I realized I had come full circle. The pain of that day at the port had been transformed into something completely unexpected. Freedom, not just physical or financial, but the inner freedom to finally live as the woman I was always meant to be. The revenge had only been the beginning. The rebirth that followed, that was the real triumph. Now, if you enjoyed this story, go ahead and click on this next video appearing on your screen, because in it you'll find a story of betrayal and comeback like you've never seen before.